Am I the asshole for leaving my girlfriend because we didn't have intimacy in almost a year? This story is somewhat dated, but has resurfaced recently due to various rumors circulating about me. To provide some context, we began our relationship after meeting at a job training event during which I organized a party and invited her. Initially, I assumed she was not interested, but she made clear advances that I failed to recognize, as I am not adept in such matters. After several people informed me about her hints after the party, I asked her out, and our relationship commenced. I was quite fond of her, but struggled with the challenges posed by her health issues. She had nerve damage resulting from a childhood operation gone awry, which necessitated the use of strong pain medications. Additionally, she took antidepressants, which, when combined with the pain medication, made her somewhat emotionally distant at times. Our intimacy was significantly affected when she switched to a different medication because her previous one was no longer available. Finding private time became increasingly difficult, yet I believe I did my best to create a positive experience for her. However, there were instances when it became quite exhausting, especially since some occasions would extend beyond an hour. At one point, I even faced difficulties completing the physical aspect of our relationship. This occurred approximately a year into our relationship. Around that time, my family began visiting me more often. I lived about 8 hours away from my hometown due to work, but my family remains incredibly important to me. Naturally, I met her family, as she still lived with them. I visited my family during every holiday, and she was fine with it since her family did not celebrate most of them. However, she never wished to accompany me because it made her anxious and she felt unprepared, given that she did not know them well. When Easter approached, my family came to visit, and I invited her to join us on a trip. Although she declined, she mentioned she might stop by with her mother after we returned, which pleased me as it would allow them to meet. During our drive home, she said she wanted to exchange gifts she had for them. I asked if she wanted to at least come in for coffee. Initially, she agreed, but upon arriving at my door, she changed her mind and refused to enter. I expressed that it was rather disrespectful at this point and emphasized that it was not a significant request. Just 5 minutes for coffee, gift exchange, and then she could head home. This escalated into an argument. Her mother got involved, and subsequently, my mom entered the situation, causing events to intensify. It was a relatively calm disagreement, but I maintained my position and stated that it was a breaking point for our relationship. I expressed the need for some space to reflect on our future, and she left. After a few weeks, we reconciled, and briefly, things felt as they once had. However, I still felt an underlying sense of unease, believing I was not important enough for her to want to stay in my life for the long haul. Our relationship shifted to a friends with benefits situation. I attempted to take her on enjoyable outings, things she previously expressed a desire to do, and I genuinely tried to salvage what remained of our connection. However, she became more withdrawn, and any time I sought intimacy, she would come up with excuses. Initially, I was okay with this, understanding that there were times when she simply wasn't in the mood for extended periods. But after 3 months, I asked if I had done something wrong or if she was no longer attracted to me. She assured me everything was fine and claimed she wanted to engage, yet every time I made an attempt, it seemed I had initiated too early, too late, or inappropriately. At that point, our dates looked something like this. I would pick her up on Fridays, and we would dine at a restaurant she liked, or I would prepare a meal, cooking being a hobby of mine. If she was in a better mood, I would attempt to make plans for an activity. If not, she would lie in bed or on the couch scrolling through social media all day or evening, or we would watch something together. Eventually, I became quite bored with this routine, so I typically turned on my computer to play games with friends before bed. That was the extent of our interactions. I never pressured her to do anything she was uncomfortable with, yet she criticized me for not taking her out when she wanted or for failing to initiate at the appropriate moments. I tried addressing our issues through conversation, exploring various ways to encourage her to go out with me, but mostly we just remained in my apartment. At one point, I asked if she could contribute towards gas or some food costs, as I had a modest income and the expenses started to accumulate. She complied, but I sensed her discontent with that. Her family also disparaged me behind my back. By this point, it had been 9 months without any physical intimacy, and I initiated a final conversation with her. I expressed my exhaustion over empty promises like, "We will do this next weekend," and accusations such as, "You are too needy," or "Do you only care about yourself?" She stated that she did not want to engage because she could not achieve satisfaction in the traditional sense. She acknowledged my needs as well and promised we would try again the following weekend. When that time came around, it was the same frustrating scenario. She scrolled through her phone while I attempted to engage with her, but she was uninterested, prompting me to distract myself by hanging out with friends. The next morning, I told her we should stop meeting, as I felt she was merely using me for attention and food, and I had no desire to remain friends. I assured her that I wouldn't block her. I wasn't angry, but I simply did not want to feign love any longer. She requested that we remain in touch, and I responded that if she reached out, I would reply but would not initiate contact as I had before. She wished to maintain our friendship, which was understandable given that I was virtually her only social contact apart from a few old friends she seldom saw. She never reached out to me again, and through mutual friends in the area, along with colleagues, I never imagined she would interact with. I began hearing rumors about me. According to these rumors, I allegedly used her for physical intimacy and socially manipulated her, portraying myself as a terrible boyfriend who failed to meet her needs. It is true that I desired intimacy. I wanted her to meet my family, but she resisted that idea, and I believed it was reasonable to want her to connect with my family if she intended to be a part of my life. I never coerced her into anything, making every effort to ensure her happiness and that we enjoyed our time together. Am I in the wrong here? How should I address the rumors? They do not impact my work or social life since I have not been going out lately, yet I still feel quite disheartened by her comments regarding our relationship. The most difficult aspect of this situation is that I still somewhat miss her and the enjoyable moments we shared, while feeling guilty that she seems to have had such a negative experience during our time together. Story 2. Am I overreacting? Trump is a Russian spy. A former Soviet intelligence officer has claimed that Donald Trump was recruited by the KGB in 1987 and assigned the codename Krasnov. Ulnur Musayev, 71, who previously served as the head of intelligence in Kazakhstan and was a KGB officer, made this startling assertion in a Facebook post on Thursday. He revealed that he worked in the 6th Directorate of the KGB in Moscow, which focused on counterintelligence operations related to the economy. According to him, one of its primary goals was to recruit businessmen from capitalist nations. This allegation revives suspicions of Russian collusion or even Trump being a Russian asset, which he has dismissed as the Russia hoax and which plagued his initial term in the White House. Prior to his election, the FBI had covertly launched an investigation to determine if his campaign had illicit connections to Russia, which later evolved into the Robert Mueller inquiry, ultimately concluding without any charges against Trump. Musayev stated that, in 1987, his directorate enlisted Donald Trump, then a 40-year-old American businessman, under the alias Krasnov. Although he provided no supporting evidence, he is recognized as a prominent former intelligence agent. The Daily Beast has reached out to him for a statement. In his Facebook post, he mentioned that his department was focused on recruiting spies and intelligence sources from Western nations, reiterating that Trump had been drawn into their operations. In a different comment, he made another shocking claim, stating, "Today, the personal file of resident Krasnov has been removed from the FSB. It is currently being managed privately by one of Putin's close associates." The surname Krasnov in Russian is derived from the word krasota, which translates to beauty. The Soviet Union and its KGB dissolved in 1991, after which Musayev returned to his home country of Kazakhstan, a former Soviet republic, from Moscow, and subsequently led the new nation's intelligence services. The KGB's most immediate successor was the Russian FSB, which retained its files in Moscow. The timing of his claims is notable, coinciding with Trump's efforts to meet with Vladimir Putin, a former KGB operative, to discuss a potential resolution to the Ukraine conflict, despite opposition from the government in Kyiv. Musayev defected to Austria in 2007 after falling out of favor with Nursultan Nazarbayev, the authoritarian pro-Russia leader of Kazakhstan, who stepped down amid protests in 2019. He faced trial in Vienna on charges of kidnapping and murdering two bankers in Kazakhstan, but was acquitted. His former deputy, who had also defected, was charged but was found dead in his prison cell before the trial commenced. He added in his comments, "I hope I will survive a third assassination attempt," referring to alleged threats to his life while in exile. His Facebook account indicates that he had been critical of Trump previously, labeling him as the old racist and expressing his desire for Kamala Harris to win the upcoming election. The ex-KGB officer has also repeatedly condemned Putin and voiced support for Ukraine. Musayev's claims are merely the latest among various allegations regarding Trump's connections to Russia. Trump has consistently and vehemently denied any inappropriate affiliations with Moscow or collusion with President Vladimir Putin. The billionaire's initial visit to Moscow as a real estate developer in 1987 attracted significant scrutiny and speculation that it had been arranged by the KGB for questionable purposes, a notion Trump strongly refuted. According to Politico, in 1985, the KGB revised a confidential personality questionnaire circulated within the agency, instructing case officers on what to seek in a successful recruitment operation. The document advised agents to target notable individuals in the West with the aim of drawing them into some level of collaboration with the agency as agents or unofficial contacts. Trump's friendly rapport with Putin and his apparent readiness to yield to his demands have fueled speculation that the Russian leader has compromising materials or compromat on him, whether related to sexual matters or financial misconduct. Reports indicate that the KGB began monitoring Trump as early as 1977, following his marriage to Ivana Zelnikova, a Czech model who reportedly relayed his interest in politics to Czechoslovak authorities. While investigations by U.S. intelligence agencies failed to substantiate claims that Trump colluded with Russia to influence the 2016 election, the Moscow Project, a project initiated by the Center for American Progress Action Fund, identified at least 272 documented interactions and 38 meetings between the Trump campaign, transition team, and operatives linked to Russia. The most sensational of all claims was the so-called Steele dossier, which BuzzFeed, then a news website, published in January 2021, just before Trump's first inauguration. Authored by a former British spy, it alleged that the Russian government worked to facilitate Trump's election, attempted to cultivate individuals in his circle, and cited anonymous sources claiming Trump had engaged in scandalous sexual behaviors in Moscow, which were recorded for compromat by the Kremlin. These allegations, often referred to as the P-tape, likely caused Trump considerable personal anger, leading to repeated public denials and fierce attacks against media outlets reporting on it. Steele eventually clarified that he was only relaying rumors he had encountered while investigating Trump, initially for a conservative billionaire and later for Hillary Clinton's campaign. Trump unsuccessfully sued Steele in both Florida and London concerning the dossier. A British judge ordered Trump to cover Steele's legal costs, although he has not yet complied with that order, as reported last month. The Daily Beast has contacted both the White House and Russia's foreign ministry for their responses. U.S. officials have voiced concerns regarding Trump's relationship with Putin. Anthony Scaramucci, who briefly held the position of White House Communications Director under Trump in 2017, stated during an episode of The Rest is Politics, U.S. podcast with co-host Katty Kay on Friday that he believes there is an enigmatic influence over the president. Scaramucci did not expand on his thoughts regarding what this influence might be, merely stating, "I do not understand why it is this way. H.R. McMaster could not determine it. James Mattis could not determine it. John Kelly could not figure it out." Story 3. How do I, 20M, talk about our issues and set boundaries with my long-distance girlfriend, 18F? We have been together for nearly 4 months now, and it is a long-distance relationship where we are a 6-hour flight apart. However, she visited me 1.5 months into our relationship and stayed with me for a week, so we are not merely casual online daters. This is serious. We discussed the possibility of staying together, getting married, and having children in the future, among other topics. This is my first relationship. She is my first everything, so everything feels new to me, and I suppose I am seeking guidance or suggestions, though I am not sure what. She has experienced a difficult life, endured numerous relationships, faced a lot of trauma from her past, and is currently dealing with depression. We argue frequently, sometimes every other day and sometimes daily. Much of this stems from her trust and attachment issues due to her past trauma, which makes her somewhat controlling. We are on video calls all the time, and I am only away when I have class, which is about 3 to 4 hours per week, or when I have dinner with my family. I have mostly stopped communicating with friends and going out, as she tends to think that I am cheating or would prefer to be with my friends rather than her. She becomes upset if I interact with any female at all. Additionally, during her week-long visit, several girls seemed to be looking at me in a way that suggested interest, though I honestly do not believe they were, and that contributes to her discomfort with me going out. Throughout our relationship, she has been in touch with her exes, and while I expressed my discomfort with it, I did not firmly ask her to stop until recently. She justified her actions by saying she does not have any friends, which is why she communicates with her exes. I let it slide until recently when we had an argument about it. She is upset that I went to a rave 2 weeks ago. We had a significant argument about this both the day before and after, as she felt uncomfortable with my attendance. I told her I could respect that and promised not to go raving anymore. However, I had already made plans and purchased tickets with a friend. Attending raves is something I had discussed with her since we started talking. I mentioned this particular event months in advance, and she never indicated any discomfort until the day before it happened. I realize now that I probably should have directly asked her how she felt instead of assuming. Although we talked about it and agreed that I would stop raving for her, she continues to bring it up when she feels upset. Her main concern is that many girls dress provocatively at raves, which is understandable, and I can see how that would make her uncomfortable. Personally, I go to raves for the music and the crowd's energy. In the few raves I have attended, and during all my outings to clubs, I have not interacted with any girl because I am straight and also have social anxiety. Moreover, I am just not the type of person who tries to pick up girls. Today, we had a disagreement because she noticed that I was friends with 3 girls on Facebook, a platform I primarily use for marketplace. 2 of these girls are the sisters of my best friends, and the third is someone I have never spoken to in my life. She constantly suspects that I am cheating, which makes me afraid to use my phone now. I feel like I am always apologizing and trying to resolve our issues, but whatever I say, she seems to doubt. I believe I lack self-respect and do all I can to make her happy, which is my only desire, her happiness. However, I am frightened. I worry that she might leave me or harm herself. She has attempted to break up with me 4 times, but afterwards she claims she did not mean it and fears that I will leave her. She asserts that I am the best boyfriend she has ever had. I love her, and I do not want to leave her. I genuinely believe she loves me as well. Yet, there are many challenges in this relationship, and the distance is a significant factor. My parents do not approve of our relationship because I am Asian and she is African American, as well as because of her status. They allowed her to stay with us for a week, but do not want me to be with her long term, which causes both of us a great deal of pain. I am doing everything possible to make her happy. I spend as much time with her as I can. I am on video call even while driving. I have stopped drinking altogether, ceased clubbing and raving, given up my social life, and disengaged from gaming, and I have been spending money I cannot afford for her. She never asks me to spend money on her. I choose to do so. I buy her gifts, send her handmade items, and provide food for her when she has nothing to eat because she is struggling financially. It pains me to see her without food. I am currently in a bit of credit debt, nothing too severe, but still concerning. Simultaneously, she also spends money on me. She used all her funds for the flight to visit me and had to pay for a passport as well. She began selling items to save enough money to see me again, and she managed to do so, but my parents do not want her to come back because they recognize that this relationship is serious and do not want me to be with her long term. This situation hurts both of us deeply. It is difficult because I do enjoy my friends, raving, and even alone time, but I do not want to lose her over these things. I do not know how to discuss it with her without triggering an argument or upsetting her, because I genuinely mean it when I say she carries a lot of trauma and is in a fragile mental state. I love her, and I am not going to leave her. I want things to work out. I have faith that they will improve. However, as things stand, the relationship is not sustainable, but I believe it can get better. Perhaps I am being naive, but I am determined to try because I love her. I want to support her, care for her, and be there for her. I love her deeply, and all I want is for us to be happy. I apologize for the lengthy message and appreciate anyone who takes the time to read this confusion. Any advice would be greatly valued. I know that I need to have a serious conversation with her, so pointers on how to approach that would be helpful. Thank you. Summary: I am a 20-year-old male in a long-distance relationship with my girlfriend, who is 18 years old. I love her, but I feel like I have lost myself. She struggles with trust issues from past trauma, and we have frequent arguments. We communicate constantly via video call, and I have sacrificed clubbing, raving, drinking, my social life, and gaming for her. She becomes upset if I interact with any female and recently accused me of cheating over 3 girls on Facebook, 2 of whom are my best friend's sisters, and 1 is someone I have never spoken to. I feel as though I am constantly apologizing, but she still does not trust me, and I sometimes hesitate to use my phone. She has threatened to break up with me 4 times but always reconsiders. My parents disapprove of our relationship, which adds to the challenges. I love her and want to make things work, but I realize that the current dynamic is unsustainable. How can I establish boundaries without making matters worse? Story 4. Ayo, filing a report on a coworker who is a bully. I am employed as a cook in a nursing home kitchen on most days and as an aide on others. A few months back, my supervisor, Bob, appointed an assistant manager named Barbara to support the kitchen operations. He brought her on board primarily because his wife was expecting their child, and he intended to take paternity leave after the birth. This decision is understandable, and it does not pose a problem. Initially, Barbara appeared to be pleasant. She possessed a darker sense of humor, which I share, so I was never bothered by her jokes. However, over time, her humor shifted from lighthearted jokes to more pointed comments directed at colleagues, and she began to express annoyance over trivial matters. For instance, we are required to serve dinner to 100 residents each night. Many of these individuals have dietary restrictions and specific accommodations that we must adhere to. One evening, we needed to serve soup, and I've held this position intermittently over the past 5 years due to health challenges. Typically, we follow a practice of preparing the soup just before starting the service line to expedite the process, particularly since we frequently face staffing shortages. Barbara took issue with this procedure because she was concerned that the soup would cool down. We prepare it directly from the hot stove and cover it with lids to maintain the temperature. It leaves the kitchen piping hot, though at times, the nurses let the food sit in its cart and allow it to cool, which is beyond our control. As the cook on duty, I have the authority to determine how the food is served. We informed Barbara of our plan before preparing the soup, and she did not request any changes. She had the option to instruct us to prepare it differently. Instead, she remained silent and later became irritated and passive-aggressive about it, making a scene by throwing pots into the sink and being excessively loud while cleaning and rude in her interactions with us. In January, she worked as the cook one evening while I was assigned as an aide. She prepared chili according to the menu for that night. Our facility has a separate building known as Hilltop, where residents pay out of pocket for enhanced accommodations compared to the main facility. The kitchen in Hilltop has been out of order for some time, so it was Barbara's responsibility to prepare a separate meal for those residents and deliver it. While she attended to Hilltop, I assisted with the main facility alongside another aide. After completing my tasks, Barbara returned, and we began cleaning up. A resident approached the kitchen holding a bay leaf, claiming it was found in her food. I recognized it as a bay leaf from our spice rack. Although I frequently cook at the nursing home and at home, I had never personally used bay leaves and was unfamiliar with them. I explained to the resident that it was a spice and offered to fetch the cook, but she declined and departed. When I re-entered the kitchen, it was just Barbara and me, since the other aide was on their 30-minute break. I mentioned the resident's complaint in a joking manner, saying, "Hey, A resident was concerned about a spice in the dish, the bay leaves. I chuckled because I found it amusing that this particular resident often complains about bland food, making the situation seem ironically humorous. Barbara instantly became extremely angry and asked, "Are you stupid?" I was taken aback and simply stared at her. She then approached me, picked up the container of bay leaves and asked, "Would you serve that to your frail old grandmother?" I looked at the container, nodded, and replied, "Well, yeah. I thought it was part of the dish since it was in the food." I was still confused, so my response came out as a question, realizing it might not have been intended for the dish, but why would it be there if it wasn't meant to be used? Regardless, she began to scold me for serving it, and I apologized, explaining that I had no experience with bay leaves and didn't know they should be removed before serving. However, she continued to berate me and dismissed my apologies, essentially calling me ignorant for not knowing. I dislike confrontation, so I chose to endure her outburst, hoping to avoid escalating the situation. A few minutes later, she finished her shift and left while I wrapped up my work. Over the next few days, I recounted the incident to several coworkers, many of whom agreed that not everyone, including some there, is familiar with bay leaves in cooking, and they felt her response was entirely unjustified. I was encouraged to report the issue to Bob, which I did. He mentioned that it was Barbara's responsibility that night to remove the bay leaves before serving or at the very least to communicate that with us. I am uncertain about what he said to her, but afterward, her demeanor toward me changed. She became either excessively formal or overtly passive-aggressive. Currently, my attendance at work has been somewhat poor due to my responsibilities as a caregiver for my mother, who is in hospice care and cannot care for herself or even walk. When Bob went on leave, it became my responsibility to inform Barbara if I needed to miss work or leave early. One day, I had to take a day off and texted her, as I usually did when Bob was present. I explained my situation regarding my mother, and her response was, "Thanks for letting me know." A few hours later, the district manager contacted me to inquire about my absence, and I explained the circumstances. She was understanding and requested that I send her a screenshot of my text to Barbara. According to her, Barbara had not informed anyone of my absence and had also missed work that day. A few days later, I needed to miss work again, this time due to being hospitalized. I was unable to notify her until nearly 2 hours after the shift had commenced, which made me feel guilty. Her response was, "So you're not coming to work," after I sent her photos of my hospital wristbands. She then followed up with, "No call, no show again." This upset me, prompting me to defend myself by stating that I only texted Bob and did not realize she required a phone call instead of a message. I asked if I should call her then, to which she simply replied, "Understood, feel better." Upon my return to work, several coworkers with whom I have friendly relations asked if I was okay. They informed me that when I sent the photos of my wristbands to Barbara, she showed them around that day, stating, "She probably overdosed." This remark upset many colleagues because they know I am not the type to engage in substance misuse. In fact, I do not even smoke marijuana, while nearly everyone else in the facility does. I am the only employee who consistently passes drug tests, and several coworkers informed one of the district managers, who provided me with his email and that of the main district manager so that I could file a formal complaint. Once again, I despise conflict, and I am concerned that I may be overreacting by considering a formal report against her. I am uncertain about the best course of action. What do you all think? Story 5. Please, is anyone else, me, 35F, devastated by realizing that their romantic relationship, him, 36M, always comes second to the real primary partnership, the platonic climbing partner. I recognize that this is lengthy, and I understand it is also a common experience within the climbing community. I just need some feedback and empathy from others, particularly if you have gone through something similar. Please be kind. I began bouldering in 2022 and found it exhilarating, but it ultimately did not suit my body due to the strain it placed on my joints and limbs. I engaged in the sport sporadically for a few years, desperately hoping it would become my new passion, but my shoulders were not able to cope. This led to deep disappointment. In the summer of 2024, I learned how to top rope from a close friend and fell in love with climbing. Around July, I thought I had fallen in love again when I met another climber. We connected intensely and quickly. He informed me early on that he would be absent for weeks at a time, and I assured him I wanted to make it work and that I understood. I genuinely do appreciate the adventurous spirit we share. I want to climb with him, participate in artist residencies while he is on his climbing trips, and perhaps even explore the same areas. I look forward to our reunions, where we can exchange stories. We envisioned a deep future together. However, other boundaries soon became problematic. For instance, he occasionally cuddles with his climbing partner, who is one of his best friends, and they spend months together alone. While that may be platonic, they were once lovers years ago. Okay, this isn't ideal. Although I identify as non-monogamous, I need time to establish a secure attachment and foundation with a new partner. This becomes challenging due to his extended absences while he is with his climbing partner ex-lover, but we discuss it and put the issue to rest. In September, he flew me out to where he was climbing with her. We then took a road trip and later ventured to Joshua Tree. During this time, I began to notice a harsh and controlling tendency in his communication. His tone was often demeaning, demanding, and inflexible. I addressed this with him, but each conversation felt like a repeat of new issues, yet another insult, a fresh derogatory comment, or a new painful judgment. It started to resemble the classic cycle of idealization, devaluation, and ultimately, discard. He is aware of my desire to improve my climbing skills, but consistently refuses to include me in the learning process, aside from a brief scramble in Joshua Tree and a single sport climbing session on Emigrant Wall. I understand that teaching can be difficult, and he is not obligated to do so. However, considering we had previously discussed spending our lives together, I expected he would want to involve me, especially since we shared a profound passion for the sport. It felt more as though he preferred to pursue his interests and fit me into his schedule whenever possible, rather than actively engaging with me. He insists that I should venture out and learn independently. I want to emphasize that I recognize the challenges of merging romance and climbing, but I felt entirely excluded. Fast forward to late November, and he has been climbing with a new regular partner since September. Initially, I did not feel threatened or concerned about her. I simply enjoyed hearing about their adventures when he returned. He had mentioned that he would be away most weekends and that I should not count on him being available. However, now he devotes all his free time to climbing with her, embarking on weekend trips together, cycling, and even planning to learn snowboarding with her. He excitedly shares that they have 3 months of adventures lined up. Meanwhile, I struggled to secure even a single weekend with him, or to convince him to commit to an event at a museum that he had invited me to. Our relationship was faltering, and the hurtful comments and crude jokes persisted. I tried to discuss these issues with him, but it was apparent that he was growing weary of the conversations. Eventually, he left for a week-long trip to Tahoe with her for snowboarding and snowshoeing, informing me only a day or two in advance. He departed while we were arguing, and I did not hear from him for 2 weeks. During that time, I was unable to sleep or eat, and I had to take time off work because I felt utterly heartbroken, discarded, and abandoned. Ultimately, we broke up after he returned. Yes, the duration was brief, but those of us who have endured similar experiences know that length does not diminish the connection, depth, or significance of a relationship. It is disheartening that sometimes there is no genuine space for real partnership when a person cannot admit that their primary commitment will always be to their long-term climbing partner. I am not going on extended trips with him, bonding with him during his happiest moments spent climbing, even though I wished to do so. I would have done anything to make it work and did attempt to, but I had to draw a line at the cost of my self-respect. I do not believe our relationship ended because he had a stronger connection with her. Instead, I think it concluded because he struggled to communicate effectively or kindly while continuing to leave for weeks. The absences were not the issue. It was the accompanying cruelty that bred insecurity within me, making me feel undervalued. I understand a love for climbing, but I cannot accept that treating someone compassionately in that sport is impossible if you disregard how it impacts them. I have never encountered someone so harsh in their avoidance. He even chose to stop climbing with his best friend of 5 years in favor of this new partner because it seemed more convenient for him. When he returned some of my belongings, they were postmarked from the new partner's city, and he had mentioned he was moving out. I can't escape the thoughts that he replaced me months ago. I genuinely believe it is due to the sports partnership she offers him, as that seems to be the driving force in his life. Even if they are together, it does not change who he is. Is it truly so difficult to integrate someone into this sport when you claim to want them as your partner? It appears he merely sought someone who could fit into his narrow definition of a climbing partner, expecting no extra effort on his part, neither in sport nor in love. In summary, I experienced profound heartbreak from a climber who initially showered me with affection, then proceeded to demean, devalue, and ultimately discard me for his new climbing partner, only to retreat into the mountains without a word after leaving me shattered.